Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
All right, so the show you're about to hear is myself, Joshua Cutchin, Timothy Renner, and Mike Clelland. And Mike doesn't join us till a little bit into the podcast because he forgot. And we bring him in maybe a quarter of the way in, something like that. But what we're talking about here are Timothy Renner's personal experiences, which he has not, for the most part, talked about publicly. He's talked about a few of them. And after talking to him a few nights ago, I realized I'd really wanted to get him talking to some other people about this stuff because I think it would help him, and I think it will help people out there who may have had similar experiences or, at least are interested in very strange experiences. The one in the woods is definitely a weird one. So, that's what this is. It's a conversation about Timothy's experiences. We talk about hypnosis, Bigfoot, ghosts, all kinds of odd stuff. And here you go. So I am here with Joshua Cutchin. Hello, Josh.
Good evening, gentlemen.
And Mr. Timothy Renner. Hi, Tim.
Hello, good to be here.
And before we get into what we're going to talk about tonight, Tim, you have a podcast you're doing.
Yeah, it's called Strange Familiars.
Okay, and you're going to have... You have a couple episodes already recorded that you're going to start to release, and how often do you think you're going to be doing it?
Well, it's taken a little bit longer to put episodes together than I thought. I wanted to do it weekly, but we're gonna try to go for like a bi-weekly schedule to start.
Okay, and tell people a little bit about what it's going to be like.
Well, I guess my idea was to kind of tell stories in the podcast. So it's not just going to be straight interviews all the time, although I'm sure we'll have that here and there. And it's not going to be a discussion, but what we'll do is we'll kind of tell stories and splice in interviews and discussion and on-site recordings where we can. In order to hopefully we're telling a story through all these different elements.
And getting different aspects of it.
Yeah.
And we are going to be distributing this in conjunction with Where Did the Road Go? So you're going to have your own feed and everything, but it's also going to be available on the Where Did the Road Go feed. So new episodes will show up along with new episodes of Where Did the Road Go.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that. Thank you.
Exciting. Nice.
So, and I like, I'm looking for shows like yours that are a little bit different from what we're doing that we can add into Where Did the Road Go? And it's a separate entity, but it's kind of like a partnership.
Sure. Yeah, there's going to be definite, crossover in the Venn diagram. Yeah, but, we're different as well.
All right. And I should also say Steph Young's show will also be a part of Where Did the Road Go here and there. She's going to be doing a membership type of a deal, and she's going to be giving out one, I believe what's going to happen is you're going to get one episode a month free, and you can subscribe to her page to get 3 more every month. Details are still being worked out exactly, but that free episode will also be a part of Where Did the Road Go?
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
So
you have starting a network.
Sort of, yes. But I don't want it to get out of hand. I still want it to be, very, very focused, and I don't want to just take on a bunch of shows and dilute what Where Did the Road Go is. But both of you are doing something different, and I like what both of you are doing. So
does this mean you're going to triple my pay, Soraya?
Yes.
Okay. 0 times 3 is 0.
All right. So, Timothy, you were on before to talk about your book, The Seven Gates of Hell.
Beyond the Seventh Gate, yeah.
Beyond the Seventh Gate. Okay. I said it and I knew it was wrong. But you've also had some experiences of your own, and we were talking the other night, and you were telling me about them, and I really wanted Josh in on this conversation because I think Josh is going to find some of these experiences really fascinating. And I want you to start with the one that's happened most recently, out in the woods, the sort of communication thing you were doing.
Okay, so this is very strange, and it actually takes place in a place called Hex Hollow, which we talk about in episode 1 of Strange Familiars. So there's some synchronicity. I was hiking through there over the summer, probably July or August, and I came upon this area of it was bright white quartz stones that had been smashed on top of this boulder on the ground, like just repeatedly smashed. You just see the splinters of quartz everywhere. It just caught my eye. I thought, well, that's interesting. So I just messing around, I made a stack of these, these quartz stones, put a stack of rocks there, like a little cairn. And I proceeded up the trail, and I'd say probably about 20 yards from that were 2 boulders, one on either side of the trail. One already had a rock stack on it, and then the other had just this odd collection of things, spent shotgun shells and lids from old cans from like the 70s. You could tell they were like the old pull tab lids, and tractor parts, bolts, things like that. Very odd collection of stuff, but they were definitely something that had placed them up there. So I just rearranged them, made a funny arrangement out of them, just curious. And I came back probably a week later, and everything had been changed. This is an area where people are, so I thought, okay, so I'm playing a game with people here, with a human. So I changed the rocks again, and this happened a few times. I would add maybe look around in the woods and find another item to add to the one boulder, and then change the way the rocks were stacked. And I'd go back at least once a week or so, and they would be changed. So I progressively started making these formations more complex. I'd make arrows and multiple stacks and different things, just more complex formations. I'd come back and they'd be changed, but they would always be simple. They'd be simplified. If I made an arrow pointing to a stack of rocks and 3 little designs around, it would be 3 rocks and a different stack of rocks or something like that. Very simplified, which seemed odd to me, because I'm thinking, if I'm doing this with another person, at least if I was doing it, I would match the complexity or even make it more complex, or leave a message or something.
Good point.
So I'm telling my wife about this, and she's a wonderful skeptic who I appreciate having skeptics in my life. So she says, well, this is just, it's a person. It's a person, and that collection of stuff was probably a crow or something. I mean, well, yeah, but this is pretty neat. So I'm going to continue this. So I would go every week and I'd take pictures of, how it was when I found it, and then how I left it. And eventually one week I went, and this is heading towards fall, and I changed things. My family was walking in the park with me, but they were in a different area. I changed things, and I went back and I met them, and my wife said, oh, well, let me go up to, she calls it my chessboard. She says, let me go up to the chessboard with you and take a look. So we walked up, and it was I'd say probably about 20 minutes from the time I was there, and it had been changed. So that means if it's a person, they came by in 20 minutes and changed it and got out of there.
Almost like you were being watched, right?
Possibly. I'll have to say there were a couple of times I went up there by myself and had some just the general weird kind of hair standing up on the back of your neck kind of feeling, but not enough to really disturb me or to scare me away. One time I was there, and some guys riding horses came around the trail, and the horses were really spooked. Now I don't know if they were spooked by me or what, but they were real jittery. But anyway, all this is still within the realm of it's another person, I'm supposing, except for the 20 minutes, having it changed in 20 minutes. It was just very, very odd. Towards the end of summer, or I'm going to say mid-fall, I think there was a road race through the park, and they had put a bunch of flags up and stuff, and it seemed like everything stopped. It seemed like it didn't change from that point on until recently. I had a friend I was telling about this, and she said, "Oh, have you checked your chessboard lately?" That's what everybody's calling it now. I said, "No, I haven't. I'll have to go up there and check it." So I parked on the other side of the park, and I hiked in. A little bit of snow left on the ground, and as I'm walking up to it, I heard 3 distinct rock clacks, or what sounded like rock clacks, behind me. I thought, well, that's interesting, but could be another person there. It could be, I don't know. It could have been anything. It didn't make me too jumpy or anything. I walked up to the area and I looked, and it had changed. It had greatly changed. It was very simplified, but definite stacks of rocks, and much simplified from the way I had left it. And as I'm there, I started getting just an overwhelming sense of fear. And I have to say, I hike probably 3 to 4 times a week by myself through the woods in Pennsylvania. I'm generally not spooked by stuff. I know what the woods feel like. I know what they sound like. So there's just something was different here. And I started, and I actually got the skunky smell coming up, and I thought, okay, here we go. Maybe this is something. Maybe I'm going to have a sighting here, or something. And then I heard 3 wood knocks in the opposite direction again, or what sounded like wood knocks. I very nervous, but I kind of made my way carefully in that direction, and suddenly, as if by magic or something, the feeling, the fear, everything, the smell just goes away. I relax, and everything's back to normal. I'm able to sort of calm down and be there without worry. I look around. I found some 3 maybe footprints. I can't call them footprints because the snow was so melted that I can't say. But it was just very, very strange. It was very odd how that the feeling was there, and then it just went away as if just disappeared. So that's that's the saga of the chessboard thus far.
That's a fascinating, confluence of events, and I think that what a lot of people don't quite get when they hear a story like that is just because every aspect of it can be written off in a certain way, to have them all happen together like that, even things like the horses being frightened. I mean, it just all is very suggestive that something else is going on. Where I would sort of depart from the way a lot of people think is a lot of people would say, oh, it must be Bigfoot. But, I've been banging the drum quite some time for the idea that, if you take away the actual sighting of a Bigfoot, a lot of the stuff that happens in forests associated with Bigfoot sounds like poltergeist activity, types of rocks being thrown and strange noises and knocks and stuff like that. But I would say that this is one of those, so many things happening in this case that it sounds more like, it's not any one of those isolated things. It sounds like there's some sort of kind of Sasquatchy kind of thing going on there, honestly. I mean, I think that's, it sounds like there's something going on there that is definitely, to my mind at least, more closely associated with that than with this other, forest poltergeist idea that I've been talking about.
But at the same time, what it makes me think of, though, is that, I mean, obviously Timothy researches this stuff, so somewhere in his mind he has the Bigfoot idea. What it suggests to me, though, is that being that you research this type of stuff, is that maybe you kind of created this thing. Maybe it's an energy spot. and you've sort of created this tulpa that has that sort of a feel to it.
Well, that was
my gut feeling in a way. As I really, when I started this, in no way was I thinking Sasquatch. I was just thinking messing around with stones. Isn't this, interesting? And then as it goes on, more and more of these things happen. And I think I said this to you the other night, Soraya. I said I started wondering, did I summon something by doing, by the act of stacking these stones and trying to communicate with something?
Right. And
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought of right away, Soraya, to that extent was, maybe you were playing, chess with yourself, and I guess sort of a variation on that idea, that
Sure.
there's some part of your psyche that's acting manifesting in the real world to without your conscious knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I would completely accept that. if it ended up being that, I would say, oh, okay. And the poltergeist thing is interesting that you mentioned that, because this area, there's all kinds of strange reports from this area. But, one book, I have read one book that says there's a Bigfoot report from that area, but I've not been able to track it down. But everything else I get in this area is strange lights or ghost type activity. There's not a lot of cryptid reports from that area. And indeed, it's not that isolated. It's in the middle of farmland.
Well, something that I think about, though, I think we take for granted, is that when you walk into a forest, in some sense, you are walking into a giant organism. And if you adopt more ideas that are along the lines of like more of either an elemental sort of idea or an almost Gaian sort of idea, I don't think that there actually needs to necessarily be a discrete class of entity that's doing this. It might just be like the forest itself. I think that might say a lot for why forests are usually embedded or imbued rather with such lore in folklore around the world.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm bringing Mike in, and Mike Clelland is going to be joining us, particularly for some of Timothy's other experiences. Hello, Mike.
Hello.
And
hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
I did not think you would be joining us tonight. I'm glad you are.
I am glad to. I totally had you on my list, and all of a sudden I saw the time, and I was like, my heart kind of sank, but I'm here now.
So now that we brought in Mike, one of the things we were talking about the other night, Timothy, is that you also have what you think might be some abduction encounters.
Yeah, I've never talked about this publicly, so this will be new for me.
And when did these start?
Well, just so you know, that one of the best places to hide is online. I'm convinced. There's so much stuff online. You can say whatever you want, and pretty much no one. Well, I should be careful what I say, but
there's so much noise.
There won't be any repercussions. So unless it's really weird. So.
So I don't know. I was on another radio program, and I mentioned the host. I was talking about my book, which is really not so much about my experiences, but I'm documenting a lot of other people's experiences. And the host said, have you ever had anything odd happen to you? Have you ever seen anything, paranormal, anything like that? I thought back, and I related an experience from my childhood where my mom woke me up. I lived on a farm in rural Maryland. She woke me up and said, "Do you want to see a UFO?" And I was, I guess, 8 or 9. I can't remember the exact date.
And who would say no at that age?
Of course, yeah. And I woke right up and we went out into the driveway. And I remember we watched this UFO flashing lights. It's sort of hovering above the tree line. We watched from the driveway for a while. And as I remember it, I was there with my mother and one of my brothers and my sister, and they got bored and went inside. And of course, the host of this program says, "Who leaves an 8 or 9-year-old kid out, at night?"
Yeah.
And it didn't seem odd to me. Like, nothing about that memory seemed odd to me until he said that. I went, "Oh. Well, I guess, I was the youngest of 6 kids, and it was a farm, so maybe, I was disposable. I don't know." But I remember watching this UFO for a long time. And in fact, I don't remember going inside. I remember then watching it from a window inside as well for quite a long time. So, he says, well, maybe you want to be regressed, and I don't I don't know about that. We'll see. Fast forward in time, around the time I started college or so. So I'm guessing very early 1990s. I don't know when communion came out, but I know I started seeing communion in bookstores, and I was repulsed by the cover. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want anything to do with it. So I just remember having this sort of visceral reaction to it, with not even knowing what it was about. I was living in the basement of a house, and I started feeling like there were people walking around the house at night. I would wake up and think I heard people outside, and I would ask the people upstairs. It was my girlfriend. I rented the room for my girlfriend's parents, so they lived upstairs. And I would ask them if they heard people, around the house at night, and they said, no, we didn't hear anything. And this progressed to me waking up and feeling like someone was in the room with me. And I thought, well, I woke up and I was sure someone was in the room with me, had the, sleep paralysis kind of thing. That happened a few more times, and I moved my bedroom into a room with no windows, because I thought, well, I must be hearing people walk by at night talking or something. They're getting into my head, getting into my sleep, and giving me these dreams. So I moved this bed into this room with no windows, and one night I wake up and I can't move, and there are 3 physicians in my head. What I thought were physicians over me. One was, I was sort of half turned to my side, and I just remember one sort of getting the impression that one was the boss kind of guy. I was very angry, very, very offended, enraged, and I really wanted to tell them to stop, and this progressed, and I fell in and out of sleep several times and was unable to move until at some point I remember I screamed at the top of my lungs. I lashed out. I punched in the direction of what I thought the physician was, and or surgeon, I suppose. And no one was there. I woke up. It was daylight, and I don't know if I stayed up for the rest of the morning, or at a reason. I kind of sheepishly walked upstairs and apologized for screaming. And it was a loud scream. I screamed at the top of my lungs, and no one in the house had heard me scream. So none of this did I put together in any way as being related to abduction experience, until I saw a show, and I think it was probably on one of those evening news shows like 48 Hours or something like that. And they did a report on alien abduction phenomenon. And as soon as they had people describe what they were seeing, it's as if the memory of the physicians kind of fell away. And I saw, I knew then it was your sort of typical gray alien. I guess is that called screen memories, where you're given sort of one memory, and then it reveals as something else.
Right, to cover something.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure how frequently this happened. It happened enough where I was disturbed by it enough to start recording myself at night with an audio recorder. I put it under my bed. It was a sound operated audio recorder, which I would listen back to in the morning. And that I became so disturbed by that I stopped doing it, and I destroyed the tapes, because a lot of me calling out at night, and a lot of just very odd noises, like just beeps and bloops and stuff that just I couldn't make sense of. And I didn't want to deal with this at the time at all, I don't think. I just kind of pushed it down and followed it away as, someday maybe I'll have to deal with this. At certain times in my life, it would spring up again here and there. The most recent episode I remember was I was in the desert looking up. Now, and I have to say, I don't think I left my bed for any of these experiences. I truly believe I was in my bed the whole time for all of these, at least my physical form. But the most recent one, again, I was laying in the desert and I was looking up. There were two people above me. And I remember thinking, that's very odd. They're in like World War I pilot headgear with goggles on. Like, it was very strange. And I'm looking at them, and they said to me very distinctly, "We are the ones who take you." And it was at that moment that I realized that they weren't goggles. That was their eyes, and they weren't helmets. That was their head. And I woke up. So that's another very just odd and distinct memory I have of it. And that's the most recent one I can recall, which would have been I'm guessing about 10 years ago.
All right. We'll go to Mike first. I mean, Mike, you've had a lot of experience with this type of thing. What do you make of this?
Well, So first of all, there's the issue of trying to go through hypnotic regression has its own flaws and its own challenges and its own controversies. So you could very well go through hypnotic regression. Information could come up, doesn't make it true. There's a lot of people who will say, like, "Oh, I'm going to find out what happened through hypnosis." It may be in many cases exactly what you find out, but just be cautious. You laid a lot out there that certainly implies a probability or a chance, with what would be called, UFO abduction. That's the sort of heavy-handed term. Alien contact or some sort of contact event may have taken place. I'm really cautious to how much I say, because I've been at your end and I have told somewhat similar things, including the line which I just wrote down where you said you didn't leave the bed. I really sense that. Like, I don't know if I really left the bed. And I have some experiences being in a sleeping bag, and I've spent a lot of time out in sleeping bags, and there's just, for instance, this is just me. I had one event in a sleeping bag. This is one that's documented in the book. I don't think I write about this in the book, and maybe I should have. But whenever I sleep in a sleeping bag, especially in cold weather, I wear a jacket, and sometimes my hands get cold. So I take a thin pair of gloves, and I sort of set them in my jacket. They're not really in a pocket, but they're not really truly, they're just sort of set under the jacket. So if I got up and walked around, or let's say was escorted out of my sleeping bag onto a flying saucer, these gloves would fall out. I woke up the next morning after some odd events that night. The gloves were exactly where they should have been. So I don't know. So that made me think that what's really going on here? There's this perception that some contact event could have taken place, but why are my gloves still just setting gently within my jacket, just sort of as if I opened it and just set them there laying in my back, like against my shoulder almost. So I understand exactly what you were saying when you said you didn't leave the bed. All these other things are these clues, and I'm sort of at the point now where I guess we all have like a pop culture definition of what UFO contact might mean. We've all seen the late night cable TV documentaries where they recreate the spooky things where people come in the bed or take people out of their car on a lonely road or something like that. Or little people, obviously aliens, usually in the recreations, they're kind of corny aliens with rubber masks. But so we are, as a culture, embedded with that pop culture scenario, that definition. from the people I've talked to and the research I've done, and granted, I'm looking at more of the outlying stuff, but my sense is that there's a depth to this. There's different rungs on the ladder. One rung is that, and I've certainly talked to people who have had exactly the experiences that are portrayed on late night cable TV documentaries. But there's rungs above that and below that don't have that textbook thing, that have these more outlying things. So I'm cautious to say, I can't just listen to you talk for 5 minutes like this and make any kind of declaration. What I can say is what you've shared is very interesting. And what I can also say, it's very common. And the fact that you're doing, writing and doing a podcast series and about these mysterious events is to me very telling. That I sense that the majority of people who are interested in this subject, and especially the people who are obsessively interested enough to do a podcast and a book or a website or write articles, those I just there's no way to know, but I suspect that these people have had contact. It may not be in the heavy-handed way, being taken from your car on a lonely road into a landed flying saucer. It may be in a fuzzier gray zone, some sort of contact may have taken place at a soul level. Somehow they may have intersected with your dreams. Somehow they may have projected these memories into your mind as a sort of archetype. So yes, everything you said was very interesting, and I'm wondering whether if we pulled on any of those threads and really followed them, maybe using hypnosis. I'm cautious again. So yeah, no easy answers, but a lot of really compelling and intriguing questions that arise from what you've just shared.
Josh?
Mike, it's interesting that you sort of mentioned these experiences taking place within a continuum. It's not like you're either, binarily someone who's an experiencer or a non-experiencer. And that was just the primary thought that I had, which was, I wonder if it's possible. You've talked a long time in your work about, the maybe people, but to sort of break that idea apart a little bit further, maybe there is something where people have, 15% of the, abduction experience. They have 30%, all the way up to, someone having a full-fledged experience. That these things might exist on a continuum, not that you're taken or not taken, or not that you're visited or not visited. Perhaps there's some sort of, as you said, this gray area in between. So that's exactly sort of the thoughts that were going through my head. But you said it in a much more articulate way because of the, the experiences that you had with speaking with people directly and whatnot.
And also, yeah, I've sort of coalesced a lot of those thoughts by writing about them. But, that said, I told my experiences to a handful of folks, including folks like Bud Hopkins and Leo Sprinkle. And I sat with David Jacobs and shared some of my experience of those. That would have been, I spoke with David Jacobs, I think in 2008. But so that's nearly 10 years ago that I talked with him. And he was really funny because he gave a similar sort of talk that I just gave, sort of like, well, we can't really know, you'll never really know. This is all, be careful what you, and he was very clear. He said, this is and he was coming from a point of view of using hypnosis as a tool. He was very clear. He said, you think long and hard before going down this road because you will not be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. If memories arise, they could be, they could derail your life. And he was very clear about that. And then at the same time, he didn't have to read too much between the lines. I knew what he was thinking, like he very clearly thought that I had UFO contact. And presently I feel like I've had that contact in my life. So yes, yeah, there is that continuum is a nice way to put it. How far, I think that some people may just have a little nudge here and there and then just may do nothing more than feel inspired to do something as as simple as like listen to someone's UFO contact story. You know, I have like accounts like that where people, and this is often dealing with owls. You know, they'll listen to someone share like a story about their own UFO, what seems to be a UFO contact, and then they'll be out alone within, shortly after that, they'll think to themselves, wow, could that really have happened to my friend? And in that moment, they'll see an owl. Now, for me, that's a form of like archetypal, confirmation's a strong word, but it's, let's just say a sign from the universe to pay very close attention. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Tim, have you had any experiences with owls?
Not nothing that stood out as spectacular, except for the house I moved into, the first house I got, and it would have been the house where I had that last experience. When we moved in, it was still decorated with the stuff from the people that were there before us, and they had a collection of owls that was astounding. And there were owls all over that house, and I remember I took specific note of that because in Pennsylvania Dutch culture, it's considered not good luck to have owls in the house. So here we are in Pennsylvania Dutchland, and they just had, there were tons of them everywhere. They just had owls everywhere. So
now to me, that makes me kind of like, and now just so you know, I am like completely like off in the corner. Like, if it wasn't for, I don't know, I just feel like I'm like one step away from being that guy under the highway overpass that, is compulsively like mumbling about owls, so I'm, so yes, I realize fully that I'm like, I have crossed the line in obsession. But when you said that about, well, it's, that the house that you lived in that had that one experience, was full of owls. Yeah, to me, that's a clue. I don't know how heavy to weight that clue, but I certainly put that on a certain, of the, on one side of the chalkboard as I'm making notes. So.
I've seen owls, seen and heard owls during the day recently too, which is, again, you go, people say it's uncommon, but I think of all the owls I've seen, most of them have been during the day. Maybe that's just because they're easier to see. But
they're out at night, and you're just not going to see them unless oftentimes you can see them in the beams of your car headlight. They're creatures of the night, and we are not, so we simply don't see them.
Right. Yeah. But
they're very common. There's owls everywhere.
Okay. Let's talk about hypnosis. I mean, obviously that was suggested to him. I tend to lean against hypnosis because I feel like with hypnosis, the possibility of your brain just filling in what it thinks should be there is too high. What about you guys?
For me, sorry, go ahead. For me personally, I guess being the subject at hand, I guess I would feel like it would have to be the right. I wouldn't just willy-nilly go with anybody. It would have to be someone I trusted for one reason or another, or I felt I had a connection with to even allow that to happen.
All right, Josh, what are your thoughts on the whole hypnosis thing?
For me, I think it's a tool. And I think that anything regained under hypnosis should be treated with scrutiny and should be, I've talked about this before. I'm amazed at how few people have an interesting if true basket. If you undergo hypnosis and it reveals some startling things about something that might have happened to you, sit with that for a while and see if it resonates with you, and then proceed from there. In terms of like objective proof, I'm not really 100% sold on its veracity, but I think that it can, I think that it can be a useful tool in the right situations, and I think that it really is more useful for the person who has undergone the therapy than, some sort of objective truth from the outside, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Now, Mike, you did undergo hypnosis. How much do you value do you put in your recollections under hypnosis?
Well, I've actually never had any successful hypnotherapy direct, associated with the UFO thing. And honestly, I'm going to do it someday. I'm going to follow through and follow up on it. And I've said to myself and, written about it, but I just want to exhaust every other avenue before I go down that road. What I did have a very successful hypnosis where I went through a past life regression.
Oh.
So I visited what seemed to be a past life, and I honestly don't really believe that story is the literal truth. What I was, I've talked about this over and over and over again, written about it, so I got no problems with what I'm about to say. But I've dealt with a life of clinical depression, had some very serious issues with it over the years, some very, very low periods, and I've talked to a handful of therapists, and people would sort of. People, oftentimes in the context of the UFO thing, and they'll say, you should do a past life thing. I don't think you need to do a UFO thing. You should do a past life thing. And then the opportunity presented itself, and this story emerged. It was so therapeutic. I just, upon opening my eyes, I just felt like I'm cured. I want to be real cautious. I don't want to jinx anything. But since that event in the summer of 2014, I've been depression free. Which I could not have said at any point in my life since I was about 12 years old.
Wow.
So in that context, yes, quitting smoking, past life regression to deal with life issues. Yeah, I think hypnosis is a powerful, powerful tool. I don't have my direct experiences with hypnosis to examine the UFO thing are very sort of convoluted what I can say is no new information emerged. What I felt is the way I had told the stories it felt like, oh, that I feel like I told them accurately. For instance, there was one event where I had a missing time thing when I was 12 years old. I came home, and I've always told the story, and it's like I came home and it was the 11 o'clock news was just about to end. And I should have been home at 9:30, but the 11 o'clock news was just about to end. And I said, I got home and my parents were mad at me and they didn't know why I was out so late. And I didn't know either. I was supposed to be home at 9:30 and that's the time I thought I was walking in the door, but it was close to 11:30. And under hypnosis, this was with Bud Hopkins, who was very frail and weak at that point. He was just, wasn't too long after that he passed. But I just remember having the most vivid, clear image of the kitchen clock we had in the house that I grew up in, and it said 11:20. Now that confirms what I already knew. So that's my experience with hypnosis. Like there's a handful of things that just kind of confirmed what I already knew. Now, I mean, it could have been, I don't know, that doesn't make it true. That doesn't mean that I looked at the clock that night and it was 11:20. That feels like I had a hyper vivid experience of seeing that. Now, I've talked to people who've had hypnosis, and some people will say, it was totally terrifying. I freaked out. I couldn't go through with it. I jumped out. I said, we're ending this right now. And then other folks have said, like this amazing story emerged with all these visuals. And I just talked, and the therapist led me through it. And it was just incredible. But I don't believe it. I don't think it really happened. I think I made it up. And so I've heard that too. There was a handful of books that came out. There really aren't that many between the mid 80s until the mid 90s, really, that used hypnosis extensively as part of the way the books themselves. The books depended on that hypnosis, those hypnosis sessions to tell the story, and there's this assumption that anyone who's had UFO contact requires hypnosis to tell the story. Now, my sense is like I talk to almost nobody that's had hypnosis, and they tell these remarkable stories. And for me, that's enough. Maybe there's some hidden gems in there that could be unearthed through hypnosis. That's an individual decision, each person. Yeah. So I have an amazing hypnosis story. It didn't happen to me. It was told to me by a friend, and I feel like he's talked about it publicly, so I should share this now. It's a great. This guy is going through he sees a hypnotherapist. He finds a hypnotherapist in his town, and it's at the home. So he visits the person at their home, and there's a husband and wife there, and the wife is the hypnotherapist, and the husband's just milling about the house doing stuff. So he's on the couch, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of his session, he like blinked, like poof, like he's like out, he's gone. He's had this like crazy like out of body experience. He's in this mystical netherworld. He's just launched into this realm of transcendent infinity, right? So, and when he hears it back, he like all of a sudden the hypnotherapist is like, Bill, you there? Bill, are you there? What's going on? And he's just like staring prone, empty. Now, at the same time that was happening, the husband, the hypnotherapist was the wife. Bill is the patient on the couch in the office, which is in this house. The husband is sitting on the couch. All of a sudden, the husband is totally paralyzed, and he looks, and there's 3 gray aliens standing in the room, completely paralyzed. This goes on and on and on. There's a certain length of time. It wasn't that long, just I'm paraphrasing from memory, maybe 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, poof, the 3 gray aliens disappear. The guy he's no longer paralyzed. He freaks out, and this coincides with when Bill on the hypnotherapist's couch kind of goes like, "Oh, I'm back. Wow, I had this really cool experience." So whatever's going on with the hypnosis, and I can't remember, like it's been written about, like nobody really understands what hypnosis is. Like therapists and vaudevillian stage magicians, nobody has a concrete definition of what hypnotherapy or hypnosis or the hypnotic state truly is. And so that story that happened to this guy Bill, to me, just shines a different light on the whole, what's really going on, and what are we connected to? Are we just tapping into the tape loops that are stored in the biochemistry of our brain, or is something even stranger going on?
Okay. All right.
So that's a very long-winded answer to your question about hypnosis. So,
Josh, thoughts? Josh?
Yes. Sorry about that. I think that, it's as usual, Mike proves himself to be an eloquent speaker on these sort of subjects. Again, I'd reiterate that I think that it is one of those things that has a lot of value for the person, for the person involved in these things. I don't think that it's foolproof, testimony to hear it from somebody else. But again, if this resonates with you, then that, I don't see why, that shouldn't be another tool at people's disposal in trying to figure out the experiences they've had. And
like the thing is, obviously what it is doing is putting us in an altered state of consciousness. And that may be the realm in which this stuff is happening in the first place. So, it's almost like you could be having another sort of experience at the same time.
That's a great point too, Sarai.
Tim, have you had other experiences other than these type of experiences?
So for a time, and this is actually occurring at the same time I was having the possible abduction experiences. I thought I had moved back from my girlfriend's house to the farm I grew up on after college for a while, and I had become convinced that the farmhouse was haunted. I'm trying to recall specific things, as just general noises that weren't the house settling and stuff. I thought I had seen some sort of an entity that moved kind of with me, kind of paced me through the house at one point. Nothing super descript, but as time has gone on, I've sort of attributed this as, part of the same phenomenon that was happening with the maybe abductions. I really hesitate to call them abductions because, like I said, I don't think for a second I left my bed, and I think it's really obvious.
Right.
The drumbeat that we keep hearing again and again here, even when Mike was talking about his past life regression, when he said he doesn't necessarily believe, that that was 100% truth, but it meant something. It obviously he benefited greatly from it, so it had to mean something. So I think, again, that seems to be the ongoing drumbeat that keeps popping up here. Just that I said it. I don't think I left my bed. Mike said, he didn't think he left his sleeping bag. But were they ghosts? I don't know. Part of the same phenomenon. That's kind of where I'm landing now on this.
And that makes sense to me. Mike missed the beginning when we were talking about your experience in the woods. Can you recap that briefly for Mike and see what he thinks about it?
Sure. As briefly as I can.
Right.
So over the summer, I was hiking with a friend, and we came upon this area. It was a boulder, and on top of it were quartz rocks that were just smashed to pieces, like several rocks. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Who's sitting here, just smashing quartz rocks all day long? Splinters of quartz everywhere. So I stacked them up, made a little cairn out of them, and there was another area about 20 yards away with two boulders that had one had a cairn already stacked on it, and the other just had this odd collection of like found items, just empty shotgun shells and old tractor parts and so forth. So I arranged these things, and I went through a series of revisiting this place for every once a week at least, and that they would be changed. The stacks would be different. I started making them more complex over time. They'd be changed, but they'd be simplified, which made me think, like, if I was playing this game with a person, I think I would match the complexity of the other person. I wouldn't simplify it. They were greatly simplified, but always changed in ways that looked, not just like they were knocked over. For instance, if I had made arrows out of the rocks, they might be just arranged in a triangle, like, or something like this. Eventually, I'm there with my family one day, and I walked up there alone and changed it, and came back with my wife about 20 minutes later, and it had been changed in the 20 minutes since I'd been there, and I didn't see any other people around. So this kind of escalated to what I thought was going to be maybe a Bigfoot sighting, but nothing happened. I was getting I was there most recently and smelled this kind of skunky smell and heard rock clacks and tree knocks, and woods went dead silent, had the hair on the back of my neck standing up. The fear response was incredible. And I was actually I follow the Bigfoot thing very closely. And I'm actually kind of preparing myself for a sighting. I was like, this has every indication of what people report, and then it just went away and nothing happened. Like the fear went away, the smell went away. I heard nothing else, and it's just like it all stopped and went away. So that's kind of been an ongoing thing where I've questioned if I think what Joshua said, what am I playing chess with myself here?
Right, are you creating sort of a tulpa type of thing?
Or even just, higher self, some sort of, subconscious manifesting in terms of, PK or something along those lines.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
I don't know. I always think of the detective novel. I mean, what's the point of solving the crime on page 2, So, I mean, I think you have to follow this through. And I think for some people, these mysteries, just remain simmering in a way that never feels complete. So I think that the challenge is an internal challenge in a way to look within. That sounds incredibly corny, but I mean, but I think that the challenge would be over if a great big Bigfoot just walked into the meadow, nodded his head, and walked out. I mean, all your answers would be or all your questions would be answered. So for whatever reason, that didn't happen, but something genuinely mysterious took place. What you've shared in that, just beyond the Bigfoot sighting, just all this other stuff, this is murky terrain. I just think if we were back in the, in some little, Indian village, some old man in the village would come up and sort of, pat you on the shoulder and say like, oh, you're the next shaman, you're the one that's gifted with these mysterious experiences. And then you have to go through some sort of initiation process. We don't have any of that in our present day culture. We have, I guess we do in a way, we have like, people making YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff like that, but we don't have the the formal tradition of it. And I think that this stuff has existed throughout the eons, and that that people are, this is the stuff of folklore, it's the stuff of like mythology, it's the stuff of spooky campfire stories, and I'm convinced it's very real. It's not like a aberration of someone's fragile imagination. It's something that's really happening. So I don't know what to say. There's like a thread lying in front of you. I mean, you're doing it obviously by talking here and writing and stuff. So, pull on that thread, see where it leads. It may, whatever's going to happen, it's going to be interesting. You may never get the answers you want. Though, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like the point of living is something beyond just being sort of locked in some sort of safe homeostasis. Like I think that this is exciting, challenging, mysterious, and quite probably unknowable stuff.
Well, and I think that sometimes we think that something doesn't really act upon us unless we have an answer, or something hasn't really been worth our while unless we have an answer. But I think sometimes, especially with things like this, the process of looking into it can act in your life in ways that you don't even really perceive in terms of, personal, dare I say, spiritual change. So I think the idea that there has to necessarily be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or, an answer to the murder mystery, I think that's something that, I mean, if there is, it's great, but I think it's something you should be, anybody who has experiences like this should be prepared for that to not happen, while at the same time being aware that even if that doesn't happen, it might still have some sort of measurable impact on their lives.
Yeah, I've had to come to terms with, and I think I've read about this quite a bit. I've been interested in this stuff my entire life, but I'd say I really kind of jumped in with both feet when I was writing the book. When I started discovering just so much that was around me, that's when I really jumped in with both feet. And a phenomenon that I went through, and I guess that it's very common, is to go through a cycle of depression when you realize that I don't get to solve this. Like this is not my puzzle to solve. I can participate. I might be able to lay in a piece if I'm very, very lucky, but I'll never solve the puzzle.
It may be that the puzzle's not meant to be solved. That the pieces may change the closer you get to solving the puzzle. If I had your experiences, I would think that the thing in the woods, as well as the earlier experiences, were all part of the same thing. Some kind of interaction with some other, or some higher part of yourself that just appears as an other to us. Yeah,
as my wife, the skeptic, often says that if she believes in one thing, it's irony, and I was again, when I'm not there, when I'm thinking about that last experience and thinking, I'm saying, here it comes, I'm gonna get the Bigfoot sighting, here it comes, and then nothing happens. That I go back to my wife, I just hear her say, I believe in irony. I believe in irony above all things, and I'm thinking, maybe I don't get that sighting. Maybe that's not at hand. It's not in the book for me. I don't know.
They're just teasing you. You wanted it too much.
It's possible.
Aside from the first UFO you saw that you remember being taken outside from, did you have any other actual UFO sightings?
Very recently, I was actually in the area at night of Toad Road that I write about in my book, and I was there with some friends, and we were watching a light just kind of dance in the sky up and down, and I have a friend that is kind of he's a brilliant guy, but he's kind of a amateur, astronomer. And I asked him, well, what could that have been? What was that? And he said, I'll write you my thoughts on it. And this was probably a month or two ago, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it certainly was unidentified and flying and an object, but I don't know if atmospheric conditions could have caused that one or not. And again, we went up there looking for a Bigfoot sign and found none, but found a dancing light.
Interesting. And you do have a picture in your book of what looks like an anomalous creature as well.
Yeah, that's just an odd thing that I mean, I didn't see it at the time. I saw something odd on the photograph and blew it up, and people seem to be pretty creeped out by it.
Well, it's definitely creepy looking. So, I mean, Mike, how would you suggest he pulls on these strings if he wanted to?
Yeah, any way possible. One way is, I mean, if you're writing about it, you're going to generate people contacting you, and that I think there's like a heightened energy that gives the whole thing. So, how do you pull on this? I mean, any way possible. Just like relentlessly try everything. Go and meditate. Go and, ask aloud. Go and make a aphorism or with a candle. I have no idea, so I can't answer that. That's a very individual thing. But I mean, just like if you're truly interested, just exhaust every avenue, and that includes hypnosis. Again, these are very personal things. So, Oh, and one thing, and obviously you're doing it, is to write everything down. That's my first thing I usually tell people: just write it all down. Put the best date you can on each event. So.
Yeah, and anything new that happens, obviously notate. You're taking pictures of your chessboard event, right?
Oh, yeah. I document it every time.
And I'm utterly fascinated by that because, I mean, obviously, yes, someone could be coming along, but the experience at the end where you had all the symptoms of an encounter, again, you go back to the wilderness poltergeist idea. It could be that you're in an area where energy is built up and like even unconsciously you might have created something. Even if you weren't consciously thinking Bigfoot, you may have unconsciously built something there by playing this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the when I say, did I summon something, that's kind of as much as what I mean, more than necessarily, opening a gateway to some other dimension or something. I think it's just as valid. Did I summon something from within?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, now, Tim, have you ever dabbled in any sort of magical practice?
Yeah.
So the plot thickens.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was big into the chaos magic thing, and Austin Spare was a great big influence of mine. So.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe, I mean, just completely spitballing here, but maybe you got the attention of and or formed a relationship with something, and it's trying to reestablish contact. That's something that I wouldn't discount offhand.
How far into chaos magic did you get? I mean, were you getting results from it?
For me, it was usually more about personal exploration as opposed to I'm trying to win over
Smite.
a woman or smite my enemies or something like this. So that's debatable. I think it helped in a way that it was sort of meditational. Austin Sparrow did this series of like drawings he called death postures, which were basically self portraits where he meditated on his own mortality. I'm assuming, and things like that were I think just personally helpful, but it wasn't world changing to the point I stuck with it. I took things from that I carry with me today. One of which is to always question everything. I thought that was the most wonderful thing that I ever got from that. And if people get nervous, question more.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts, guys?
I mean, I know very little about like magical practices, but it does show up a lot in people's experiences. People have these experiences. The Bigfoot, the haunted house, the moving into the house with owls, the seeming UFO contact stuff, the seeing lights in the sky. There's all this stuff, and the UFO researchers, I mean, I can tell you like half the things would be, or more than half, only one of the things would be paid, anyone at MUFON would only pay attention to one tiny little
right.
Like slice of that big pie. So something's going on. There's little spokes on this wheel, and all these spokes have these tantalizing clues and sort of their own mythology. What I wrestle over is what's at the core of the wheel. What's holding all those spokes together.
That is kind of the ultimate question. And can the core of the wheel change if we get too close?
I think so. I think it can morph, and I think it can just jump away from us. And I think as soon as you think you wrap your mind around something, it somehow, there's some new event that emerges that topples that house of cards, and you've been confronted with an even deeper mystery.
It's like it's there to cause us to question.
Yeah.
Or you find out that the hub is on another spoke on another wheel.
On another wheel. Yeah. It's a fractal.
All right. You have any questions for anyone, Tim?
No, honestly, I'm a little, I'm shaking a little bit just because, like I said, I never talked about this stuff before, so this is pretty new.
Wait a minute. So, but you've got a book that's like hundreds of pages long. You get that, and you didn't talk about it in the book. I haven't read the book.
I did not. I talked. It's about other people's experiences. The book.
Okay. Are you writing about your own experiences?
I thought one day. I've kept notes. I've kept journals and so forth. But I thought one day I'd like to write a book about something like that. In general, just kind of choosing to see symbols in life as opposed to just choosing meaning as opposed to just choosing coincidence. So I've sort of been working towards that with these sort of things, but it's down the road. It's not my second book.
Okay. So just as far as it doesn't have to be a published book, but one of the few pieces of advice I do give folks is to simply write everything down. Just write it down. It could be sloppy. No one's going to read it but you. But try to date things as best you can, and just make a list. Put everything in there. Maybe a third of it or 2/3 of it is just coincidence, or it's been memory has changed it enough. But just write it down. So.
Yeah, and I believe I have. I mean, I've journal, and I'm an artist, so my journals are sketchbooks with little notes in them and so forth. And
okay, that's another. So you've dropped every single clue in the thing here. So just the fact that the creative type, that's when so of the checklist of things I ask is, are you a creative type? And that's I think that there's something to that. The folks that have a creative stuff, and then you mentioned depression. That's another thing that shows up all the time in this research. People who tell their own depressive episodes, the living in the haunted house is something that I hear all the time. And then what it doesn't get reported, there's a few folks. David Weatherly is very clear about it. That that folks who the Bigfoot character, this mythological creature we know as Bigfoot, is tied in somehow to this UFO stuff. The classic Bigfoot hunters don't want to go down that road, but that's certainly what seems to be showing up in people's real experiences.
It's definitely a personal axe that I have to grind.
I noted that in my book. A lot of my book is just hard research, going back through old newspaper articles. And I've begun to say, I can almost guarantee you that, at least in Pennsylvania, if you find a Bigfoot sighting, I can find a UFO sighting around the same time, around the same place. I can almost guarantee it. And for people to ignore that is very frustrating for me.
You got to try hard to ignore that. Yeah.
But it doesn't fit in the flesh and blood, nuts and bolts scenario is the problem.
Then you got to push the flesh and blood, nuts and bolts scenario off to the side, and follow where the evidence is leading. That evidence sounds crazy sometimes, though.
I mean, I'm sort of sour on the idea of if it'll ever happen. I mean, if you think that if the UFO community is hesitant to engage in non-materialist sort of ideas of what could be going on, to really, depart from this, tired extraterrestrial hypothesis idea, the cryptozoological community is even more stodgy about it. I don't see that being I literally don't see that being an advancement that a majority of those people make, within the next 20, 30 years.
At one funeral at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally agree. I always say, if you're going to believe one witness when they say they saw an 8-foot tall hairy ape in the woods, and you're not going to believe either the same witness or a separate witness who says they saw, a UFO or an orb at the same time, like that's just picking and choosing. It's unbelievably frustrating. But I've run into that as well, where they don't even want to, even if you want to phrase it like, I'm trying to, Dr. Johnson from Pennsylvania, he wrote a book called the Bigfoot Phenomenon in Pennsylvania. One of the best books I've read. It's unfortunately you have to write to him to get a copy. It's not available in stores. But he has a chapter on quantum physics and Bigfoot, and he really takes into account like maybe this creature can access these quantum abilities and these quantum realms that we just don't have access to, and maybe it does it instinctually. Maybe it's not a scientific thing.
Well, it's like anything. I feel like it's like with getting scientists into a bar and getting a couple of beers into them, or getting ufologists into a bar and getting a couple of drinks into them. They all start to admit the shortcomings of their own personal paradigm once they let their guard down. And I think it's probably the similar thing with cryptozoologists, feeling like, oh yeah, well, Bigfoot's flesh and blood, and then 2 beers later, it's like, yeah, but there was that one time that I saw those lights in the forest too at the same same time.
I saw it disappear. It just, but I'm sure it just was really good at hiding.
Or the footprints that go off in the snow and then just, come to they just end in nowhere.
In the middle of the field, I have several accounts of that, and very nice family locally. The father of the family, they had 2 miles of footprints through their yard in the 1970s, all kinds of other Bigfoot sign, hair, and so forth. The dog's going crazy. And I'm talking with him, and he said to me, those things are aware of their own tracks. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, it walked to the middle of the field and the footprint stopped. So it backtracked in its own tracks the whole way.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
That's what little Danny Torrance did in the maze at the end of the Shining to defeat Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Well, I guess it could.
Yeah, but it really is that sin of working backwards from a conclusion. Like, well, we know that Bigfoot is a relict Gigantopithecus, so it must be doing this.
And we know that UFOs are from another planet, and they're visiting here the same way we visit Yellowstone National Park and abduct grizzly bears.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that, that's the assumption, but actually it is an assumption, though it's treated as dogma.
So Tim, let me ask you this: when this whole chessboard thing started in the woods, was this around the time you were writing the book, or before or after?
It was after, actually.
Okay, so you had already started exploring this stuff when that happened.
Yeah.
What did anything change in your life? Did your life become more normal when the weird sort of possible abduction experiences stop?
I live a very abnormal life. I'm an artist. I live, from paycheck to paycheck, art sale to art sale. A musician. So normal is really relative with me. And like I said, I've always been into this stuff. It's just not. I wouldn't say I researched it. I would kind of say I just kind of stayed up on it. I'd read internet sites and so forth, but it, I just really jumped in with the book. But I've always been there, and I would go through periods of. I describe it as sort of Mothman prophecies like activity, where I would get very, very interested in this and have all kinds of just weird stuff. Mostly just synchronicities, but even like the phone calls to no one at 4 a.m. at the same time of night, for weeks on end. And just these odd, weird things, and it seemed like they would coincide with how deep I was getting into researching the stuff.
I think that falls under anomalous phenomena as well. I mean, Mike has tracked some pretty bizarre synchronicities of his own.
Yeah, and just what you're saying is you look into the abyss, and the abyss looks back at you is one way to put it, and you stir things up and things get stirred up. Yeah. So that what you've said is from my own direct experience, I understand that completely.
And from my experience, as someone who was a practicing chaos magician as well, I had these experiences that I tied in with that. And at some point realized in reading Whitley Strieber's work that the archetype was the same as what he was experiencing. It's just I didn't have the UFO camouflage on it.
Yeah, well, if you look at the entities that Aleister Crowley was drawing that he supposedly had contact with, they look like gray aliens.
Yeah, Lamb.
Yeah.
I'm actually. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'll just say that I've talked to a bunch of shamans, and then they say that like in among the pantheon of these spirit entities that visit them, there's like a kind of a consistent cross section of people. Either they go through meditation or through rhythmic dancing or through peyote or something like that, will encounter these mythic creatures, and one of them is the prototypical gray alien, and like shamans just say, oh yeah, that's just one of them, and that's just part of their shamanic tradition. And so yes, yeah, so they just happen to be showing up in shiny flying saucers for some of us, and then they show up in a shamanic meditation and for someone else.
And that is, I was just going to say, that is kind of how I look at it. I compare this to a sort of a modern day shamanism where because we don't have that ritual anymore in our culture, something else has taken over.
Yep, I agree.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to say I'm in the process of wrapping up an essay on this exact subject. I think that for me, looking into these things, I've found a lot of my questions addressed by looking at sort of the magical literature and seeing the way that sort of reflects, a lot of these contact experiences. So, if there's anybody who is out there sort of wondering about it, if you look deep enough, it becomes a lot more palatable. You say the M word in front of people and they're like, what is that? Are you serious? It's like the least scientific thing ever. But there are some people out there, some personalities who have made it really palatable, for me at least, to sort of put it in a context that isn't, basically what it means is a non-materialist view of the world. So yeah, if anybody, that's an area that some people have talked about. But I think it still is. We just begun to scratch the surface on the connections there.
So, while we're talking about this and the ritual idea, there's one. I don't know how much you want to get into this on your show. You can edit out if you don't. But there was one experience on pretty powerful psychedelics that settled things for me in a way. I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead.
So, coming out of one of these, like I said, I would call them the Mothman prophecies type periods. I was also sort of the salvia was still legal at the time, salvia divinorum, and a very close friend of mine and I were repeatedly using it in a ritual fashion. I wouldn't recommend. That's not a party drug by any means. And it was one night we had. I remember we had played a little concert at a cafe, and we had planned to do this. And we went back to the Owl House, we'll call it. And I was sort of. I had just read an article, I think, about Terence Mckenna and his experiences with psychedelics and contacting these alien beings. And I thought, well, I don't want to deal with this. Like I said, I packed away the whole abduction thing, and one day I'll deal with this kind of thing, but not today. And I'm thinking, like, well, this could be a bad trip because I'm worried about this. I'm actually thinking of it, set and setting's huge with this. So I'm actually worried about this as I'm going into it. I'm even thinking maybe I should just skip tonight. And I was like, whatever. We plan to do it. So salvia is super potent, and it's short. That's one of the things. It's not like ayahuasca or anything where you're going to be up all night. It's a very short sort of blast of intensity. So we did this, and we were in the bedroom sitting together, and I had this experience of sort of the room opening up almost like a flower, where I could see the night sky, and sure enough, there were UFOs flying around everywhere, like just a silly amount of UFOs.
Mm.
And I'm starting to get nervous. I'm thinking, okay, here comes a bad trip. Like this is gonna get bad quick. And I grew up Catholic. I say I was I'm culturally Catholic. I've taken that with me through all things. I love the symbolism and the ritual. I'm not particularly religious. I don't attend church, but just the symbolism of Mary has always been very beautiful and meaningful to me. And I tell people, I don't care if you say she was a real person, or she was the mother of God, or she was a symbol of the goddess, or she didn't exist at all. It doesn't matter to me. It's a symbol that I love, and it's a symbol that's meaningful to me. It's kind of surpassed any ideas of reality. I don't care. It's something that's meaningful to me in my life. So these UFOs are flying around, and they sort of congealed into this kind of glowing image of Mary. At which point I just started laughing, and it went from this very kind of potentially scary thing to just this wonderful, the universe kind of laughing with you moment. And that really settled any experiences I had, as far as the abduction stuff, were all before that. And it seemed like that things kind of settled down also with the sort of weirdness and the uncomfortable kind of spookiness after that as well. So.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what you changed.
I don't know. Some subconscious part of me maybe came to terms with it. That's the only thing I can imagine.
Okay. I don't know. Any other thoughts, guys?
I have two, and I write about it in the Owl book. and a little bit more at length in this follow-up book, which someday will get published. It's taking forever, but I have two women who both had, I think that's August 15th is the Feast of Mary. It's a Catholic holiday in celebration of Mary. And I have two women who have had what they call their enlightening experiences, or their awakening experiences on August 15th, which I think is very interesting. So that like to have a woman to have an awakening on August 15th, and then a third person who is a Catholic historian, basically, having a UFO sighting on that day. So these three women, I just, so that Mary showing up, that for me was just like, well, that is a powerful, it's sort of crossed over for me. And I have not proof, but just, fleeting clues that the Blessed Virgin is, I don't want to say tied into the UFO contact thing, but there's some sort of playful, is as good a term as any, some sort of playful aspect that has dragged, where those two have overlapped, the Catholic symbolism of the Blessed Virgin and an awakening experience involving UFOs.
Well, the Blessed Virgin Mary apparitions in general. I think that Vallée considers them, Fatima, one of the most important.
Great example, yeah.
One of the most important ufological events ever. So that's, that definitely makes sense. And if you look at the way that, especially patron saint feast days, and sort of the way that paganism was assimilated into the early Catholic Church, it doesn't surprise me that something that feels this old would align with that in the same way. In other words, I'm not sure if it means that, that patron saint feast days align with, these sort of Magonian phenomena. I think it's more along the lines of these feast days and whatnot, these holy days, or these, holy locations, were holy for a longer time than, before the church got a hold of them. And in the so it's more like it's more about these current phenomena are tapping into that older set of beliefs, as opposed to, really tapping into a Christian set of beliefs.
And that this UFO thing may very well be just an old belief structure that's reemerging now with a shiny new outfit on.
I'm gonna say that experience was in August. I know it was during the summer. I'm gonna have to look back and see.
Oh yeah, let's figure this out. Yeah, you'll be So it's a spell. No, all the only examples I have are strictly women. So, please do. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I'm going to look back when we're done here. I'm afraid I'll mess up the Skype here if I look now, but I'm going to do some digging, and we'll see when it was.
Nice.
That would be really interesting. Yeah, and I think Mary in particular is so ingrained in our culture too, which is probably why any goddess figure is going to become Mary at this point, to anyone who's been raised in Western culture.
Yep.
With any religious background whatsoever, I would have to say.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, when I sort of dug into, accepted that I was culturally Catholic, after it becomes, when you're young and in high school and stuff, and you're into alternative culture and so forth, it's very not cool to be in any way Catholic or Christian. So I kind of stepped away from that for years. But as an adult, when I sort of accepted it as part of my cultural makeup and the symbols that sort of mean things to me, I'm looking back, and I really wanted to connect with John the Baptist. I just thought, what an amazing symbol that is. And in fact, one of my albums has Salme on the cover holding John the Baptist's head. I was like, and it sort of didn't click, and it's just another one of those just I think, pokes from the universe where Mary just starts popping up everywhere for me all of a sudden, and I got nothing from that, though I was running after John the Baptist. I got nothing really from that, and it was Mary that brought the revelation.
Well, I think that if you were to revisit that and dig into John the Baptist, I think you'd find a lot more. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there now that I'm familiar with, comparing that to, the headless symbolism of John the Baptist being compared to, Aleister Crowley's headless right and stuff like that. So that is a rich vein of speculation if you ever want to revisit that.
Oh, I got very, very into the whole headless, the cult of the headless for a long time.
Yes. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you guys. This has been fascinating, and I hope, Tim, this was of some help to you.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, it was it's kind of new talking about these. I became very comfortable talking about other people's experiences that I documented, but this is very new.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yes, so do I.
Well, I thank Mike and Joshua for joining me tonight.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, delight.
And Mike, you will be back for the next edition of UFO History.
Yes, I will.
All right, excellent. And real quick, everyone can be found. Josh, you're at
JoshuaCutchin.com and right here.
Okay, and Mike?
MikeClelland.com is one way to find me. That's actually the easiest way. You can Google UFOs and owls, and my name comes right up at the top of the list.
So is the Hidden Experience audio not?
Oh, it's still there.
Anymore?
It's still there. It's okay. The MikeClelland.com is just has a set of hyperlinks from there. So
okay.
So yeah, I've got some funny cartoon blogs and stuff like that there too. So, but the Hidden Experience, yes, you can Google UFOs, owls, and Hidden Experience will come right up if you Google my name. So yeah, that's the sort of the site where I do all my paranormal stuff, and I haven't done a podcast in over 2 years, so I'm itching to get back at it.
And Timothy, your site?
I guess the closest to an all-in-one catch-all would be darkhollerarts.com. That's they'll find the record label there in my book, and they can contact me from there if they want to.
You want to spell that?
DarkHollerarts.com.
All right. And your podcast again is called what?
Strange Familiars.
And that's going to be the first episode will be up. When are we talking date wise?
Oh, we don't have a specific date, but hopefully within the next what's today?
We're recording this on the 30th of January.
So let's say the first 2 weeks of February sometime. Hopefully in the first week, but probably the second might be more realistic.
Okay, and it will be its own entity, but it'll also be distributed through the Where Did the Road Go iTunes feed, YouTube feed, RSS feed, and all that. So you'll be able to find. You can just follow along, or you can go check Timothy out on his own. Either one, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, strangefamiliars.com should be up too. That might be easier for people.
All right. Thank all three of you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.